When people think about Native American jewelry, I feel like one of the first things that comes to mind is the beautiful, iconic squash blossom necklace, like the one sitting in front of me right now. They think of the beautiful turquoise stones and the hand-carved silver squash blossom pendants. But these necklaces also have a really fascinating history, and I'll be walking you through that today. So the history of squash blossom necklaces begins in the late 1800s, probably around the 1870s or 1880s, which is when the native people first made contact with the Spanish, and the Spanish actually taught them silversmithing, which allowed them to make jewelry out of silver instead of just bones or other natural materials. And the Navajo tribe was actually the very first tribe to create the squash blossom necklace design, and by the 1900s, the design had spread to other tribes such as the Zuni and other tribes in the southwest region. So the reason why they're called squash blossom necklaces are because of these hand-carved silver pendants that look like a blooming flower, but there are also two other elements that are in every squash blossom necklace that makes them really easy to identify, and those are just the plain hand-carved round silver beads, but also this horseshoe-shaped pendant at the bottom of every squash blossom necklace, which is called the Naja pendant. And the Naja pendant actually has its own very unique history that I'll get to a little bit later. But first I want to talk about why these flowering beads are called squash blossom beads. The name of these necklaces obviously comes from that silver bead that's shaped like a flower, but it actually all started when the Spanish conquistadors wore pomegranate-shaped buttons on their shirts and pants and even their capes, and the Navajo used that design in their necklaces. And the Navajo word for these beads actually translates to the bead that spreads out. And then somewhere along the line, when these necklaces were being traded, a trader called them squash blossom beads because they thought they looked like the crop squash, which the Native Americans highly relied on in the Southwest. As I mentioned before, that silver horseshoe-shaped pendant, which is called a Naja by the Navajo, has its own unique history all on its own. It actually first appeared in the Bible's Book of Judges, and it was used as an ornament around the necks of camels. But it has also been found by archaeologists in other ancient cultures like Rome, and the Moors adopted the symbol as a bridle ornament for their horses and passed it on to the Spanish. So when the Spanish came to the Americas, it was then that the Navajo were exposed to the symbol, and they started using it on their horse bridles, and then later used it in their necklaces. Even though it's a very highly valued piece of jewelry in their culture, its purpose is usually only decorative and not spiritual or religious, but it has been seen displayed in different Navajo ceremonies. So now that you know more about the history of squash blossom necklaces, I wanted to share with you some specific details about the necklaces that are in front of me. They are both vintage necklaces, and both feature Old Kingman turquoise, which is turquoise from the Kingman mine in Arizona, and it's known for that beautiful sky blue colored turquoise that you see. The necklace on the left has 8 silver squash blossom pendants with that Old Kingman turquoise, and the stones are surrounded by hand-carved silver rope and silver leaves. And the Naja pendant also has turquoise from the Old Kingman mine that is also surrounded with silver rope and silver leaves. The necklace on the right is also very traditional with the silver squash blossom pendants, and its Naja pendant has Old Kingman turquoise with silver rope, and that middle stone is surrounded by silver rope and also silver flower petals. Both of these vintage necklaces are perfect examples of the traditional squash blossom necklace. Today, squash blossom necklaces continue to change and grow. They're not always made with just turquoise or silver. Sometimes they're made with gold or even diamonds. But no matter the material, they still symbolize a blending of cultures and stand as a beautiful representative of Southwestern Native American jewelry.